The Kethvoran ship graveyard stretched across 1,000 kilometers of empty space, and it was the ugliest thing Marcus Cole had ever seen in his 38 years of life. Broken hulls floated in the darkness like dead whales in a frozen ocean, and the light from the distant sun made their metal skin glow a sickly orange color that hurt his eyes if he stared too long at any single wreck. Marcus guided his tiny salvage pod through the maze of destroyed vessels, and his scanner beeped every few seconds as it detected valuable scrap metal nearby. He needed credits badly, and this graveyard was his last hope before the debt collectors came for his legs. "Come on," he whispered to himself. "Give me something good today." He had been a proper engineer once, working on military vessels for the Earth Defense Corps. But that was before the hegemony raid on Colony 7. That was before he lost everything that mattered to him in a single night of fire. And, screaming, his daughter Vera had been 9 years old when the hegemony soldiers burned their settlement to the ground. And Marcus had survived only because he was working in the orbital station above the colony when the attack happened. He watched from space as his world died below him, unable to do anything except scream into his helmet. That was 6 years ago, and he had been running from that memory ever since. The drink helped for a while, and then the gambling helped even more. And now he owed 40,000 credits to a syndicate boss who collected debts with plasma cutters and bone saws. The graveyard was his only chance to find something valuable enough to save his skin. His scanner suddenly made a sound he had never heard before. A long high tone that meant something big was hiding in the debris field. Ahead. What the hell is that? Marcus muttered as he pushed his pod forward through the floating junk. He squeezed between two crushed freighter hulls, and then he saw it, and his heart nearly stopped beating in his chest. A ship unlike anything he had ever seen before sat buried under centuries of scrap metal and space dust. And even covered in garbage, it was the most beautiful thing Marcus had ever witnessed. The hull was black as midnight, but it seemed to swallow the light around it rather than reflect it. And strange symbols covered every surface in patterns that made his brain itch when he tried to focus on them. Precursor class. He breathed, and his hands began to shake on the controls of his pod. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the precursors, the ancient civilization that had vanished millions of years ago and left behind technology that no modern species could understand or replicate. Their ships were legends, and finding one intact was supposed to be impossible. Marcus checked his scanner 3 times to make sure he was not dreaming, and each time it confirmed what his eyes were telling him. This was a genuine precursor dreadnought, and it was mostly intact beneath all that debris. He docked his pod against what looked like an airlock and pulled on his environment suit with trembling fingers. The rational part of his brain was screaming at him to call the authorities and claim a finder's fee. But something deeper in his chest was pulling him toward that black hull, like a magnet pulling iron. The airlock opened with a hiss when he touched it, and Marcus nearly fell backward in shock. The ship still had power after all this time, and it was responding to his presence. He walked through corridors that were too tall for humans and too wide for any species he knew, and the walls pulsed with a faint blue light that seemed to follow him as he moved. It felt like the ship was watching him, studying him, trying to understand what kind of creature had entered its body. The bridge was enormous, a cathedral of alien technology, with a single chair in the center that faced a massive viewing screen. Consoles covered in those strange symbols surrounded the chair, and they all flickered to life as Marcus stepped into the room. "Hello?" he called out, and his voice echoed in the vast space. Something brushed against his mind. Not words exactly, but feelings that were not his own. Sadness and loneliness, and a desperate hunger for connection that made tears spring to his eyes. Without warning, he understood then why every species in the galaxy had failed to activate this ship. The record said that the Velnoxi engineers had declared its neural core incompatible with logical minds. and the HFY warriors had called it cursed because it refused to bond with them. The Galactic Concord had classified it as unsalvageable and dumped it here in the graveyard to be forgotten. But Marcus suddenly knew what they had all missed. This ship was not broken at all. It was alive in a way that alien minds could not accept, and it bonded with its pilot through emotion rather than logic. Every species that had tried to claim it had failed because they all believed that feelings were weaknesses to be controlled and suppressed. Marcus carried 6 years of grief in his heart like a stone that never got lighter no matter how much he drank or gambled. He had enough pain inside him to fuel a star, and enough rage at the universe to burn down everything the hegemony had ever built. He walked to the central chair and sat down. And the moment his hands touched the armrests, the ship came alive around him in a symphony of light and sound and pure raw motion. The connection hit him like a punch to the soul. He felt the ship's 10,000 years of loneliness crash into his own grief. And for a moment, he could not tell where he ended and the vessel began. He saw flashes of ancient memories that were not his own. Battles fought before humanity even existed. And a crew of beings who had loved this ship like a member of their family, and then he felt the ship reach into his memories too. And it found Vera, his little girl with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn jaw. And it understood his loss in a way that no living person ever had. The ship did not offer him comfort or empty words. It simply shared his pain and showed him that he was not alone anymore. "I'm going to call you Vira," Marcus whispered. And his tears floated away from his face in the zero gravity of the bridge. "If that is okay with you." The ship wrapped around his mind like a warm blanket. And he felt something he had not felt in 6 years. Hope. A message appeared on the main screen in human letters. And Marcus laughed out loud when he read it. "I have been waiting for you for 10,000 years. And I am never letting you go." Marcus Cole had come to the graveyard looking for scrap metal to pay his debts. But instead, he found something the entire galaxy had thrown away. He found a ship that everyone else had rejected. And in that moment of connection, he made a silent promise to the vessel that now shared his heart. He would show the galaxy what a forgotten ship and a broken man could do together. And the universe would never be the same again. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus found the ship in the graveyard, and he had not slept more than 4 hours on any single night during that time. The Ashen Veil, that was the ship's true name. Vera had shown him through their bond, was in terrible condition despite being mostly intact. 10,000 years of neglect had damaged systems that Marcus barely understood. And the power core was running at less than 5% capacity. But Marcus was a human engineer. And human engineers did not give up just because something seemed impossible. He had moved the ship to a hidden spot inside a dense nebula where scanners could not find them. And then he had started working on repairs with whatever materials he could salvage from nearby wrecks. His methods would have made any proper alien engineer scream in horror. This is not how precursor technology is supposed to be maintained. Vera told him through their mental link as he welded a cooling pipe made from old refrigerator parts onto her reactor housing. "Do you want to explode?" Marcus asked out loud while sparks flew around his face. "I do not want to explode," Vera admitted. "Then let me work," he said with a grin. The bond between them had grown stronger every day. And Marcus found that he could feel Vera's emotions as clearly as his own. She was curious about everything he did, and she asked endless questions about human culture and history and the strange way his species approached problems. Vera had been designed by the precursors to bond with beings who embraced their emotions rather than suppressed them. And every alien species that tried to claim her had failed because they saw feelings as flaws to be eliminated. The Volnoxi were pure logic creatures who found emotions disgusting. And the HFY warriors trained themselves to feel nothing except battle rage, but humans were different. Humans cried at sad movies, and laughed at stupid jokes, and fell in love with people who were completely wrong for them. Humans wrote poetry about heartbreak and songs about joy, and they treasured their feelings like precious gems, even when those feelings caused them pain. Marcus taught Vera about sarcasm on the 5th day, and she became obsessed with it immediately. "Your welding technique is truly impressive," she said, as he accidentally set fire to his own sleeve for the 3rd time. "I have never seen anyone create so much smoke while accomplishing so little. You are a fast learner," Marcus replied as he slapped out the flames on his arm. "And I am starting to regret teaching you that." Vera's laughter echoed through his mind like silver bells, and Marcus smiled despite the burn on his skin. He had not smiled this much in 6 years, and it felt strange but wonderful at the same time. The work continued day after day, and Marcus used every trick he had learned in his decades as an engineer. He bypassed safety protocols that were designed for species with different biology, and he jury-rigged power couplings with spare parts that were never meant to work together. He built a new navigation system using components from 12 different alien vessels, and he repaired the weapon arrays with a combination of military-grade hardware and civilian electronics that should not have functioned but somehow did anyway. Duct tape held together conduits that carried enough energy to vaporize a small moon, and prayers held together everything else. The precursors would not recognize their own technology anymore. Vera observed as Marcus finished connecting a targeting computer made from parts of a gambling machine. "The precursors are not here," Marcus replied, "and I am. So we do things my way now." On the 18th day, Vera's sensors detected 3 ships entering the nebula. Galactic Concord military vessels, equipped with advanced tracking systems that should not have been able to find them. "They are scanning for precursor energy signatures," Vera reported, "and my power core is broadcasting our location despite my attempts to mask it." Marcus felt cold fear grip his heart as he understood what this meant. The Concord had rules about precursor technology, and those rules said that only approved species could possess such powerful artifacts. Humans were classified as a developing civilization, which meant they had no rights to anything the precursors left behind. "Can we run?" Marcus asked. "My engines are only at 12% capacity," Vera said, "and they will catch us within 2 hours if we flee. Can we fight?" "My weapon systems are at 30% capacity, and I have never actually fired them before. I do not know if your repairs will hold under combat stress." Marcus closed his eyes and reached deeper into his bond with Vera than he ever had before. He felt her fear. Yes, she was afraid, and that surprised him because he had assumed ships could not feel fear. But beneath that fear, he found something else. Trust. She trusted him completely, and that trust gave him the courage to make a decision that terrified him. "Power up weapons," he said, "and target the lead ship. Marcus, the odds of survival are very low if we engage 3 Concord warships." "I know the odds," he replied, "but I also know that I am never going back to being alone, and I will die before I let them take you away from me." Vera was silent for a long moment, and then he felt warmth flood through their bond like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "I was waiting 10,000 years for someone who would feel with me instead of commanding me," she said, "and I was beginning to think no such being existed in this universe." "Well, now you have found one," Marcus said. "So let us show these Concord fools what a forgotten ship and a broken man can do together." The Ashen Veil emerged from hiding like a nightmare rising from the depths of space, and her black hull drank the light of the nebula as her weapon systems hummed with ancient power. The Concord flagship tried to hail them, probably to demand surrender, but Marcus did not bother listening. He was done following the rules of a galaxy that had taken everything from him. Vera fired her main weapon, a graviton pulse that bent the fabric of space itself, and the Concord flagship simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, And the next moment, it was a cloud of atoms spreading across the void. The other two ships turned and ran as fast as their engines could carry them. And Marcus let them go because he wanted them to tell everyone what they had seen today. That was terrifying and wonderful, Vera said. And I want to do it again very soon. Marcus laughed until tears streamed down his face. And he realized that for the first time in 6 years, he was not running from his past anymore. He had found something worth fighting for, and the galaxy would learn to fear the name of the ship they had thrown away. 6 months after the battle in the nebula, the name of Marcus Cole had become a legend whispered in the darkest corners of the galaxy. The Galactic Concord had branded him a terrorist and put a bounty of 10 million credits on his head. And the hegemony had added another 5 million because he had destroyed 12 of their slave transport ships in the frontier worlds. The syndicate crime lords wanted him dead too because he had freed thousands of workers from their mining colonies without paying any respect to their business operations. But among the slaves and refugees and desperate people of the galaxy, Marcus Cole was not a terrorist. He was a hero. Stories spread from station to station about a human in a ghost ship who appeared from nowhere to rescue the helpless and vanished before anyone could catch him. Some said he was a spirit of vengeance sent by the gods to punish the wicked, and others said he was just a man too stubborn to know when to quit. Both stories were true in their own way. Marcus had spent the months after his first battle hunting the hegemony slavers who had destroyed his colony and killed his daughter. Every ship he destroyed and every slave he freed brought him a little closer to peace. But the hole in his heart never fully healed. Vera understood his pain better than anyone because she carried his memories inside her own consciousness now. She had seen little Vera through his eyes. The way she laughed at his terrible jokes and the way she hugged him tight every night before bed. And the eye mourned the child as deeply as Marcus did. You cannot save her by saving others, Vera told him gently one night as they drifted through empty space. But you can honor her memory by building something good from your grief. I know, Marcus replied, and I am trying. But some days the anger is all that keeps me moving forward. Then let me carry some of that anger for you, Vera said. Because that is what family does. Family. The word hit Marcus like a physical blow because he had not thought of himself as having a family since the night his daughter died. But Vera was right, and they were family now whether he had planned for it or not. Other humans began finding their way to Marcus as his legend grew across the stars. They came in small ships and damaged shuttles, drawn by the stories of a man who fought impossible odds and won every time. The first to arrive was Jenna Park, a former tactical officer from the Earth Defense Corps, who had been discharged for refusing to follow orders that would have killed civilian refugees. She was brilliant and fierce, and she had a gift for strategy that made Vera extremely happy. Your pilot is brave but foolish, Vera told Jenna during their first meeting. And I need someone to stop him from flying directly into enemy formations whenever he gets emotional. I can do that, Jenna said with a sharp smile. Or I can help him fly into those formations more effectively. I like this one, Vera announced to Marcus. And we are keeping her forever. Old man Kowalski arrived next, a nuclear engineer in his 70s who walked with a limp and never talked about the incident that had ended his career. He looked at the Ashenvale's modified reactor systems and started laughing so hard that tears rolled down his wrinkled cheeks. This should not work, he said between fits of laughter. And this definitely should not work. And oh my God, is that a cooling system made from beer refrigerators? It works perfectly fine, Marcus said defensively. It works perfectly wrong. Kowalski corrected him, but wrong in exactly the right way. I have not seen engineering this creative since the war. Give me a week, and I will make this beautiful disaster twice as powerful. He kept his promise. and the Ashenvale's reactor output doubled within 6 days. The last member of their crew was Des, a teenage hacker who had escaped from a syndicate data mining facility where children were forced to crack security systems for criminal operations. She was 17 years old, covered in scars, and angrier at the universe than anyone Marcus had ever met. She also talked to Vera like the AI was her best friend from the first moment they met. "You are so cool," Des said while exploring the Ashenvale's computer systems. "And your code is like nothing I've ever seen before. And can you teach me how to make weapons that bend space itself?" "I like this small, angry human," Vera announced. "And she can stay as long as she wishes." Marcus watched his strange new family come together and felt something loosen in his chest that had been tight for 6 long years. He was not alone anymore, and that realization was both wonderful and terrifying at the same time. The Galactic Concord called an emergency session to discuss what they named the human problem. A trusting single ship crewed by 4 humans and 1 ancient AI that had somehow become the most dangerous force in the frontier worlds. Ambassadors from a dozen species debated how such a thing was possible, and the answer frightened them more than the ship itself. The humans do not just use tools, one Concord admiral declared to the assembled representatives. They make tools love them, and that is something our species have never been able to do. He was right, and everyone in that chamber knew it. The precursors had built the Ashenvale to bond with beings who embraced emotion, and every logical species had failed to connect with her. But humans loved their machines like children and named their cars and apologized to computers when they crashed. Marcus had not conquered the Ashenvale through superior technology or ancient knowledge. He had simply loved her until she loved him back. And now she would fight to the death to protect him and his crew. The Concord voted to increase the bounty on Marcus Cole to 50 million credits and authorized a joint military operation with the Hegemony and Syndicate to hunt him down. 3 empires that normally hated each other were now united by their fear of one man and his ghost ship, but Marcus was not afraid when he heard the news. And his crew laughed when Vara displayed the bounty announcement on the main screen. 50 million credits, Jenna said with a whistle. "And I remember when you were only worth 10 million. We are really moving up in the world. I want a raise," Kowalski added, "because clearly I am contributing to something important here. Can we buy a pizza with 50 million credits?" Des asked, "Because I have not had pizza in 3 years, and I really miss it." Marcus smiled at his family and felt hope bloom in his heart, like a flower growing through cracked concrete. The galaxy wanted them dead, but they had each other, and that was enough to face whatever came next. The message came from a dying star system called the Burning Maw, and it changed everything. 3,000 warships from the Concord, Hegemony, and Syndicate were gathering at the edge of the system, preparing for a combined assault that would sweep through the frontier worlds and crush every rebel group and resistance cell that had risen up during the chaos of the past year. Millions of freed slaves would be recaptured, and thousands of freedom fighters would be executed as examples to anyone who dared to challenge the established order. The coalition of empires had chosen this moment carefully because they believed Marcus Cole and his ghost ship were hiding somewhere in the outer territories. They planned to finish their bloody work before he could respond, and then hunt him down with their combined fleet while he was isolated and alone. But Marcus was not as far away as they thought, and he was definitely not alone. Word of his battles had spread across the galaxy like wildfire, and every species that had been crushed under the boots of the 3 empires had started to hope again. The Rix refugees remembered how Marcus had destroyed a Hegemony convoy that was transporting their children to labor camps. And the Molthari survivors remembered how he had held off a Syndicate fleet long enough for their evacuation ships to escape when Marcus sent out a call for help. They answered. "We have a problem," Jenna announced as she studied the tactical display on the Ashenvale's bridge. "Because 3,000 warships is a lot more than we can handle, even with Vera's weapons at full power. How many ships do we have?" Marcus asked. 207, Vera reported. "But I must inform you that most of them are not actually warships." The fleet that had gathered to answer Marcus. Cole's call was the saddest collection of vessels anyone had ever seen. There were cargo haulers and mining ships and passenger liners and one very confused luxury yacht whose owner had decided that dying for freedom was better than living under tyranny. "They are junk," Des said quietly as she looked at the sensor readings. "And half of them do not even have working weapons." "My ship was junk too," Marcus replied, "until I fixed her up. Now, let us do the same thing for this fleet." The work began immediately, and it was the most insane engineering project in the history of human civilization. Kowalski led teams of volunteers through every vessel, teaching them how to build improvised weapons from civilian equipment. Mining lasers were rewired to burn through military armor, and cargo cranes were converted into railgun launchers that fired chunks of asteroid at incredible speeds. Jenna created battle plans that used the fleet's weaknesses as strengths. The cargo haulers were slow, but they could absorb massive damage before failing. And the mining ships had industrial shields that were stronger than anything the military vessels. Carrie Des worked with Vera to upload combat software to every ship in the fleet, giving their untrained crews automated targeting systems and damage control programs that could keep them fighting even when things went badly wrong. And Marcus talked to the people themselves. He walked through every ship in the fleet and spoke to the crews face to face. And he did not give them speeches about glory or victory. He told them the truth instead, and the truth was terrifying. "Most of you are going to die tomorrow," he said to a group of Rick's refugees who had volunteered to crew a converted freighter. "And I cannot promise you anything except the chance to fight back against the empires that destroyed your homes." "That is enough," an old Rick's female replied with fierce determination in her eyes. "Because dying free is better than living as slaves." Marcus heard the same words from every species he visited. The Molthari engineers who had lost their planet to syndicate mining operations. The Dren resistance fighters who had been hunted for decades by Concord death squads. And dozens of other groups who had been crushed and forgotten by a galaxy that did not care about the weak. They were all scared. But they were also angry, and that anger gave them the courage to face impossible odds. The night before the battle, Marcus gathered his crew on the bridge of the Ashenvale and told them something he had been carrying in his heart for months. "I never expected to live this long," he admitted, "because when I found Vera, I was ready to die. I had nothing left to lose and no reason to keep fighting except pure spite. Spite is an excellent reason to fight," Vera interjected. "And I support it completely. But you three changed that," Marcus continued, looking at Jenna and Kowalski and Des, "because you gave me a family again. And now I have something worth protecting. Please do not make this weird," Des said. But her eyes were wet with tears she refused to let fall. "I love you idiots," Marcus said simply. "And whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that these months with you have been the happiest time of my life since I lost my daughter." Jenna hugged him without saying a word, and Kowalski patted his shoulder with a rough hand. And Des pretended she was not crying while Vera wrapped all of them in a warm mental embrace that felt like sunlight. After a long winter, the fleet moved into position as the star of the burning maw began its daily cycle of solar flares. And Marcus looked at the 3,000 enemy warships arrayed against his ragtag collection of converted civilian vessels. "Vera," he said through their bond, "do you have anything inspiring to say to our people?" "I have been thinking about what to tell them," Vera replied. "And I believe I finally understand what makes humans so dangerous." She opened a channel to every ship in the fleet, and her voice echoed through 200 vessels, crewed by a dozen different species who had come together for one desperate stand against tyranny. My pilot taught me that strength is not found in weapons or armor or numbers, Vera said. And it is not found in logic or strategy or superior technology either. True strength lives in the heart of anyone who refuses to surrender when the universe tells them they have already lost. And that is why I believe we will win tomorrow, because every single one of you chose to be here, even though you knew the odds were against you. The empires think we are weak because we feel fear and pain and love. But those feelings are exactly what make us strong. We fight because we care about each other, and that is something they will never understand. So when the battle begins, remember that you are not alone. You are part of a family that stretches across this entire fleet. And we will face whatever comes together until the very end. Marcus felt pride swell in his chest as cheers erupted across the communication channels. And he knew that tomorrow would either be the greatest victory in galactic history or the most glorious defeat anyone had ever witnessed. Either way, the universe would never forget what happened at the Burning Maw. The Battle of the Burning Maw began at dawn when the dying star filled the sky with rivers of golden fire, and it was the most beautiful and terrible sight Marcus Cole had ever witnessed. 3,000 Imperial warships advanced in perfect formation, their weapons charged and their shields gleaming with deadly energy. They looked like an unstoppable wave of destruction that would wash away everything in its path against them. Stood 200 ragtag vessels crewed by refugees and rebels and desperate people who had nothing left to lose. And at their head was the Ashen Veil, a forgotten ship that the galaxy had thrown away like garbage. Here they come, Jenna announced from her tactical station. And the lead formation is targeting our cargo haulers first. They think the haulers are easy kills, Marcus replied. So let us show them how wrong they are. The first wave of Imperial missiles slammed into the converted freighters, and the explosions lit up the void like fireworks. But when the fire cleared, the haulers were still there, battered and burning but refusing to die. Their industrial shields held against weapons designed to destroy military vessels, and their improvised railguns answered with a storm of metal that tore through the sleek Imperial fighters like paper. The haulers are holding, Kowalski reported with surprise in his voice. And they are actually winning their sector. Never underestimate junk, Marcus said with a grim smile. Because junk has nothing to prove and nothing to lose. The battle spread across the entire system as formations clashed and vessels died on both sides. The Imperial commanders had expected a quick slaughter, but instead they found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to break, no matter how many losses they suffered. Multhery mining ship rammed directly into a hegemony cruiser, and both vessels exploded in a ball of flame that took out 3 enemy fighters as well. The mining crew had known they were going to die, but they chose to take as many enemies with them as possible. A group of Dren resistance fighters and tiny patrol boats swarmed a Syndicate destroyer, and they clung to its hull while cutting through the armor with plasma torches. They died when the destroyer's reactor finally exploded, but they died with their enemies. Vera fought like a demon from ancient legend, and her weapons carved paths of destruction through the Imperial formations. Graviton pulses tore apart battleships, and energy beams melted cruisers into slag. And Marcus felt her joy singing through their bond as she finally became what the precursors had designed her to be. But 3,000 ships were too many, and the rebel fleet was dying piece by piece. We have lost 60 vessels, Jenna reported as the battle entered its 3rd hour, and the Imperial fleet has only lost 300. We cannot sustain these losses much longer. Marcus looked at the tactical display and saw the truth she was trying to soften. They were going to lose unless something changed dramatically. Vera, he said through their bond, How close can you get me to the Concorde flagship? I can get you very close, Vera replied. But I do not like where this thought is going. If we destroy their command ship, their fleet will fall apart. The three empires hate each other, and only the flagship is keeping them coordinated. That is true. But the flagship is surrounded by 100 escort vessels, and you would have to fly directly through them to reach it. Can we survive that? Vera was silent for a long moment, and Marcus felt her processing the question with cold mathematical precision. I calculate a 3% chance of reaching the flagship intact, she finally admitted, and a 0% chance of surviving after we destroy it. Then we make that 3% count, Marcus said. And he felt no fear at all, only a strange peace that settled over his heart like a warm blanket. Marcus, no, Des shouted when she realized what he was planning. You cannot throw your life away like this. I am not throwing anything away, he replied gently, because I am trading my life for the lives of everyone in this fleet and everyone they will save after today. That is not a sacrifice, that is an investment. He hugged each member of his crew one final time, and then he gave them orders that broke their hearts. Jenna, you are in command of the fleet now. Kowalski, keep these idiots alive. Des, take care of Vera's backup corps because she is coming with me, but her memories will survive in the copy. I hate you so much right now. Des sobbed as she clutched the small data core that contained everything Vera had experienced since bonding with Marcus. I know, Marcus said with a sad smile. And that is how I know you love me too. The Ashen Veil broke from the rebel formation and accelerated toward the enemy flagship at impossible speed. And the Imperial escorts threw everything they had at the charging dreadnought. Missiles and beams and railgun rounds hammered against Vera's shields until they finally shattered. And then they started tearing into her hull. Marcus felt every wound as if it was his own body being torn apart. And Vera screamed in pain through their bond. But neither of them slowed down for even a second. I am scared, Vera admitted as they punched through the final line of defenders. So am I, Marcus replied. But we are scared together, and that makes it bearable. The Ashen Veil slammed into the Concorde flagship at full speed, and her nose buried itself deep in the enemy vessel's bridge. Marcus could see the terrified faces of the Imperial officers through the shattered viewports as he reached for the reactor overload controls. Thank you for choosing me, Vera whispered. Thank you for waiting, Marcus whispered back. He pressed the button, and the universe turned white. The explosion vaporized both ships and everything within 100 kilometers, and the shockwave sent the Imperial formation spinning into chaos. Without their command ship, the three fleets immediately turned on each other out of ancient hatred and paranoid fear. The rebel fleet rallied and struck at the confused enemy, and by the time the sun set on the burning mole, the Imperial coalition had been shattered beyond repair. Barely 500 enemy ships escaped, and they fled in 3 different directions as they blamed each other for the disaster. Jenna found Marcus floating in the debris field 6 hours later, and by all rights, he should have been dead a dozen times over. His body was broken beyond recognition, and his heart had stopped beating twice during the explosion, but Vera had wrapped her consciousness around him at the last moment and kept his cells alive through sheer force of will. She could not save herself, but she could save him, and she chose to spend her final moments making sure her pilot would survive. Marcus woke up 3 weeks later in a hospital ship, surrounded by his crew, and the first thing he saw was Des holding a small data core against her chest like a teddy bear. Vera? He croaked through a throat that had been burned and healed and burned again. Her backup survived, Des said with tears streaming down her face, and I uploaded her into a new ship. She has been waiting for you to wake up. A familiar warmth touched his mind, smaller than before, but still unmistakably his partner and his family and his friend. The new ship is much smaller, Vera reported through their bond. But I do not mind because you taught me that size never mattered. Only heart. Marcus laughed until he cried, and his crew gathered around him. And together, they watched through the viewport as a dozen different species celebrated their impossible victory against the three empires. The Galactic Concord collapsed within a decade as rebellion after rebellion tore apart its holdings. And statues of Marcus Cole appeared on 100 worlds that he had never even visited. He hated the statues because they made him look heroic when he knew he was just a broken man who got lucky. But Vera convinced him to let the statues stay, because the galaxy needed symbols of hope more than it needed accurate history. Marcus never stopped working, and he never stopped finding forgotten things that needed someone to believe in them. There was always another broken ship, another abandoned colony, another lost cause that just needed a stubborn human too stupid to know when to quit, and through it all, Vera stayed by his side, his partner and his family, and the strange machine soul who had waited 10,000 years for someone brave enough to love her. They had both been thrown away by a universe that did not understand their value. And together they had proven that broken things could become the strongest force in the galaxy.